Big five. Yeah. Version girl. Oh, you come and you go like the morning sun.
Started with me getting into reggae music back in about 78 through my older brother. He's 5 years older than me. We had emigrated to Australia in the 60s. And when we come back, he was about 14 or 15. In the early 70s, you had all like the club reggae and Tighten Up and all that kind of thing. So when he'd go to parties, he would hear some of that music in there. He was more into like the Beatles and maybe the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix and them kind of things. But reggae was a little part of it. Then in the mid-70s, we both was into the punk thing. That was a kind of 2-year thing, which was all what was really kind of meant to be, It's like punk just meant to come along, go bam, and take you away from all that high-end music business stuff. But then after it kind of finished, it was just like, what's the next music, And I used to hear bits of reggae coming from his room and stuff, and that kind of interested me. And I said to him, what's a couple of albums to look for? And he said Dr. Lamentado, Best Dressed Chicken, Joe Gibbs Chapter 3 dub. So I bought them 2 albums, and it kind of just was like, that was it, this is my music now, About the same kind of period, you had I think David Rodigan was like starting on the radio. You'd hear tunes on there. It's just like, yeah, you start to find the record shops, Daddy Cool up in Dean Street, and even Virgin Records in them times. You could go in Virgin Records and buy Studio One dub albums and things. So it's like, the original article. I remember a magazine called Time Out, one of these listing magazines. They did an article on all these record shops in London, all these second-hand record shops. Big list, So it was just like, I had a motorbike at them times. So go around all of them, hunting tunes out. You had the record and tape exchange shops where people would, back in them times, they'd just get rid of their collections because they got into new music or whatever. So all the old 70s stuff was just in there, get up there, buy a 7-inch record for 10p, 20p, 12-inch for 60p, 80p. So just was buying loads of tunes and just getting into it. A little later I started having an interest in making music. I've been playing bass from when I was 15, nothing great, just fiddling around. But I see that, you could buy a little Porter Studio, a little 4-track cassette Porter Studio, and a drum machine. These are quite new things at the time. I thought, yeah, let me try that out, get these little things, just potter about and, it was a hobby, make some tunes, do over some of my old favourite Studio One tune or something, It was mostly rubbish, like you do when you just start out and stuff. But, you make little progressions and things. And my brother started to come in because he could hear it was like kind of getting a little interesting, and he could play rhythm guitar and stuff. And, we were still collecting records at the same time, and there was a couple of record shops that I used to go to quite frequently. There was one up in Camden Town called Flash Forward Records, and the guys in there, they was big Shaka fans. Whenever you go in the shop, you'd hear Shaka session tapes being played. And we was never really, me and my brother, because we lived out in the suburbs, we was never really a part of that sound system thing at that time. But we'd hear these tapes and it was just like, that sounds good, you know what I mean? So listen to that sound, it's awesome. And I'd start playing some of my tunes, I'd take a little cassette up there and play my tunes to the guys, and they said, yeah, you should take it to Shaka. And Shaka had a shop down in New Cross, an arts and craft culture shop. We had known of Shaka through his records and stuff, but didn't really know that he was playing out anymore. I had a dub plate cut, 4 different tunes on it. Took that down to him, he said, yeah, give me 4 cuts of each of the tunes on there, come to the next dance. We went to the next dance the following week. That was September in 87, 86. it kind of took off from there, getting into that whole Shaka sound system scene, you know. And at that time, it was a very it was a black scene, you know. There's very few white people in the dances. You could count the amount of white people on one hand. You had a little contingent of Asians that had been going for, I think, from about 84. It was very underground, you know, because most of the big sound systems that, you know, the UK big sound systems from the 70s and stuff had all gone into dancehall, you know. They'd followed that whole Jamaican route. Shaka just maintained what he was doing, you know, roots music, cultural music. And I think had gone through some very lean period in the early 80s, you know, with very few, you know, people will say there was very few people attending the dances, but he just continued to do them. By the time that I started going, you know, the crowds had started to pick up a little bit. It was still a good vibe. And we went to the first dance and, you know, we was complete novices about sound system dances and stuff. You know, he'd given us a flyer and it said starting at 9 o'clock, going on till the morning. So we're there in Peckham at 9 o'clock. You know, at the venue. The venue's blacked out. There's nobody there, no vans, nothing. So what's going on? We go into a cafe, wait for a little bit. 10 o'clock comes, a little small transit van turns up outside the venue with some dreads inside it. My brother goes up to him and says, you know, I said, Shaka here tonight? He says, yeah, later. So we go back to the cafe, you know, about 11:30, you know, you see this truck come along. Shaka in his truck. I just start to see the whole thing from beginning to end with him lifting out the boxes, you know, these guys taking them up these back stairs into the venue. We just walked into the venue and stood up in the back wall. We see the whole thing. And at that time it was like Shaka's original set with these boxes that kind of had hand carved stuff, you know, like Shaka and Jah written in the front of them. Big old wardrobe double boxes and things like that. It was very ancient looking. You know, and then wires all over the place. You know, everybody now, all the sound systems now, it's all wires are taped up along the floor, all back routes, all kind of nice and neat and tidy. But them times it was all strung across the ceiling, you know, wires going this way, it's like a spider's web. So it was like, yeah, see all of that. And then you see the point where it's like everything's ready to go now, and he puts the first tune on, and just, you know, maybe a little tops is coming on, and you hear that tss, 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 tss. And it seems to be sparkling in this room, you know, as it's battering against the walls, reverberating around and stuff. Then the mid-range comes in, it's like, yeah. So, and then bass line. And I just remember, you know, when you first draw the bass, it's like, I was thinking, I can't breathe. You know, it was like, it just hit me there, and it's like, oh, I'm going to survive, you know what I mean? And you take another breath, and it's like, oh, thank God for that. And then it just, you know, the whole thing just starts to get rolling, the lights go down. And you're kind of thinking at the same time, like I say, there was very few white people. And I think at the time, you know, the exact time that we was there, that we was only 2 white people in the hall. You're thinking, it's Peckham, you know, 1986, you think it's going to be a bit rougher stuff. But the people, they didn't take a blind bit of notice of us. We just stood at the back there and took it in. Lights went off, and that was it. The crowd, they got into their dancing and their, you know, and enjoying their music. So it was a good overall vibe, you know, it's to see that whole thing from beginning to end. You know, that was an experience, and then it just kind of all took off from there. I'd already started producing at that point, so, you know, although it was still just a hobby, it was just like, okay, what it actually did for me, it really kind of made a focus, and it really it twisted something in my mind as well about making music, because before that, mostly what I was doing was just doing over old favourite reggae tunes. On this dub plate, there was a couple of tunes that we had sort of done that were like variations of a tune. It was a Freedom Sounds tune, you know, a Jamaican tune, a roots tune that I liked, and I kind of twisted its beeline around a little bit to make my own tune. And it was heavy, it was like pure Shaka kind of style. But I used to find it very hard to come up with rhythms like that. But after that first dance, and hearing music played in that way, because, you know, when you listen to music at home, it's like you're listening to it on maybe small speakers and, you know, low volumes, because you can't disturb your parents or your neighbours or whatever it is. You don't really get the fullness or the full force of music. But there was one thing that I noticed in that dance. There was a tune that he played, which was a Johnny Clark, I think, Jah Give I Love, on the backside of Bad Days Are Going on Greensleeves 12-inch. And I'd had this tune, I'd bought it in a second-hand shop, And it's not like to me at the time, it wasn't like a classic Johnny Clark. It wasn't like Johnny Clark at King Tubby's. You know, it was later. It was like 1980 or something. So the mix was a bit kind of like just, you know, plodding along. The tune was heavy and stuff, but you didn't really appreciate that listening to it at home. I got rid of the tune. But then in this dance, Shaka runs it. And he's drawing bass, you know what I mean? It's just like, all of a sudden the tune just makes sense. That's what this tune was made. It weren't made for you to listen at home on your little hi-fi. It was made to be played in a sound system, X amount of thousands of watts, for it to be battering your ears and for guys to be skanking around to it. I had to go out and find the record, which was quite easy at that time, you know what I mean? Go back into record and tape and buy it back. For me, picking up a bass guitar and playing bass lines, it's like I could hear in my head, you know, like again, when you're in the studio, you hear it, you're listening at kind of lowish volumes and you're just going boom, boom. Is it really dropping? Is the bass line dropping or something like that? But now in my head, I could hear how it sounded like in session. So when I come back home the next day, I'm sitting there, I'm not hearing it like going boom, 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 boom. I mean, it going boom, 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 boom. You know, I can imagine in my head the walls shaking and stuff like that. And the bass lines made sense. The whole focus then was like, I knew what I needed to do to make the right kind of, Shaka would always say, it's the right kind of tune. You know, so it was just like, yeah, it all kind of gelled together after that first session there. And because Shaka just can't, you know, he kept asking us for new music. Because I think at the same time, you know, there wasn't so much roots music, new stuff being made. You know, you had Shaka doing his thing. You maybe had Twinkle Brother, Mad Prof. You know, the rest of it, you know, what was coming from maybe Jamaica and from America was more kind of like dancehall orientated. Some of it had some heavy rhythms, but you know, it was like, it wasn't sort of, you know, always in the kind of manner that we wanted our tunes to have and stuff. So I think he was quite happy to get some new music from some people, you know. So for me it was just like, okay, you know, I'm in my studio every day, you know. I was working at time, I come home from lunchtime at work, I'd be on my studio, you know, sort of like next tune, you know, mix some mixes off, give them to Shaka, hope that they be the right kind of tune that he play in the dance. The whole thing just evolved that. But it was still a hobby for me, you know. It was exciting to just go to the dance, hear my tunes and hear a lot of other tunes that he was playing, you know, new stuff from himself and from a few other people that were making things. Because you had at the same time, Alpha and Omega were just coming up, and Sound Iration, which was Manasseh, was coming through. Blacker Mix was there, Dread and Fred slightly, you know, maybe a year later and stuff. It was exciting, you know, it was very fresh and vibrant. It went overground. It didn't die out, it's always there. Like I say, you know, with a lot of the old school sound systems, they went more into the dancehall because in the end it's like it's a business, it's sort of money orientated. The people will determine what music you're going to be playing at a lot of dances. So all the sounds, I think there used to be a video available. I think there's some clips on YouTube now of a dance that happened sometime in the mid-80s. Just had, I don't know, 25 of the old original sound system DJs come along and play their selection, and the only one that's playing any roots in there is Shaka. The rest of them, it's all dancehall. The crowds change how vibes are in the dances. When, you know, in them earlier times for me of going, it was primarily a black crowd. People felt, you know, when I heard the music for a start being played on the radio, and I felt, especially seeing someone like Manasseh, white guys, it's like, oh, maybe it's safe for us to get involved in going to these dances as well. Because you do, as a white person, think maybe it's like it's not a good thing to be going down to Peckham or Brixton into a dance. You don't know, you know, what the vibe might be and stuff. You're hearing these guys, you know, white guys involved in it. So it's like, yeah, you have more students come in. In the later part of the 80s, it was maybe still very much more of a reggae crowd. Even the white people that would come, they were maybe white people that have been into the music for a good number of years, like myself, and that. It still had that kind of cultural vibe into it. Then when Shaka started playing the Rocket venue, which was a student venue, predominantly white student venue, it kind of changed the vibe. You had a majority of students against the original crowd that was going there, and students don't respond to the music in the same way. Where in like some of the old dances, if Shaka got hold of Mike and said, Jah, you'd have the whole crowd going, Rastafari, you know, all the old dreads in there responding to it. When you're playing a certain tune, you know what I mean? If you played a tune like Kunta Kinte, an instrumental tune, people, the black crowd would know what Kunta Kinte meant. It wasn't just a heavy tune going boom, 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 you know what I mean? It had meaning through the name of it and its history. They would respond to it. You know, so you put it on and you'd hear the little intro, the thing, da, 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 and it go, yeah, rah, rah, you know what I mean? And you know, it would like G it along, and that would G Shaka along as well, you know, getting that response from the crowd and stuff. But when you're playing to a student crowd, they don't know that history, they don't know how to respond to it. You know, and I see like in the dances down at the Rocket and stuff, you know, Shaka would go, Jah on the mic, and you could like, there's one guy over there go, Rastafari, one guy over, Rastafari, you know what I mean? It's like the response wasn't the same. And I kind of felt, you know, after a while, after a few dances, you saw less and less of Shaka doing that kind of call and response thing with the crowd, because it just wasn't really getting the response. So he would just, you know, get his head down and play the tunes. But it missed that roots kind of, the cultural kind of element to it and stuff. A lot of the original crowd started to kind of go less because it felt differently to them as well. Even saying that, and at that time in the early 90s, it was a fresh thing, you know, what we was coming with the music and stuff, what they call now UK dub. It was very fresh, you know, the way that we was kind of making tunes and stuff. So it kind of lifted off, you know, and it's like we was there as part of that. And it was a good vibe, you know, and you had people like Iration Steppers from Leeds come down and get involved in clashes and stuff with people, you know. It all kind of just lifted off. It was, you know, you had the dub club, you know, what Culture Promotions were doing, you know, not just Shaka's events. They started up the dub club at the Dome at the Tufnell Park, getting in lots of different sounds and stuff. And it was kind of, yeah, it was, you know, a lot of things were happening at that time. Southend was, you know, having its dances. We was all playing down there. Southall Community Centre, lots of different things going off, and it was a good vibe. You know, we was travelling up to Bradford quite a lot to do dances up there, down to Exeter and Cornwall and places. It's harder now, I think. There's maybe a lot more competition now. I think at that time, you know, there wasn't so many sound systems. You know, you can go on the internet now and you see something, you know, there's a forum called Speaker Plans about building speakers and stuff like that. And they do a little Roots and Culture sub-forum. And it's like, you see the amount of people that go on there and all these different sound systems. But where are they playing? People have got the equipment, but they've got no venue. There's no promoters doing anything. And it can be very hard for them to really kind of get involved. It's harder for them as smaller sounds to get into their bigger events, because the bigger events, the promoters are thinking, do that small sound carry any crowd? What's the point in me getting in them when I can just get, you know, Abashanti and Iration Steppers and blah, 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 who we know are going to draw a crowd. So very hard for up and coming sounds. The only thing they can maybe do is try to set up things in their own areas. The same kind of thing has happened in places like France and Italy, and it happens there. Maybe it's a fresher vibe there, and the youngsters are more interested or more, their minds are more piqued by it. You know, we've played in a lot in places, and some of them don't have like big crowds, but they have enough of a crowd that it's sustainable, and they can keep their thing going and stuff. That doesn't seem to be happening so much in the UK. Maybe it's because, you know, it's been here too long, but maybe people are just not trying hard enough in the UK to get things going. It takes some effort, you know. If you're building a sound now and you want to get out there, maybe you can't rely on promoters or anybody else doing anything for you. You know, the cry always was, oh, nobody does this for me, nobody does it. It's like, no, you've got to do it yourself now. You know, so you have to find your venue and try and get something going. It might be on a small scale. Maybe you can't take in your whole sound system that you want to mash down the place. Just take in 2 box and keep it at a level that can work for that place there. If it builds up, then maybe you can find a better venue in your area and get more people in there, and you can bring more box in there, you know. It's easy for me to say that. It's another thing trying to do it, I know, you know. Maybe that's the only way. Maybe it's, you know, them things have got to happen for people, you know. Certain little areas it does seem to happen. Like Mungo's do their thing up in Glasgow. When that first started, it was kind of small scale, but, you know, look at them now. You know, they're travelling all over the world doing stuff. I'm just doing what I'm doing now, you know. It's You know, during the 90s, especially the first half of the 90s, we had a direction with this whole dub thing. But for me personally, by the mid 90s, I was kind of a little bored with doing just dub. You know, I wanted to work with more singers and stuff. And I'd done a couple of things like with Sister Rashida and Deja from Bradford. But I liked Jamaican music and wanted to produce tunes that were more in that kind of vein. You know, at that time, you started getting a lot of music coming from labels like Exterminator and Digital B and Penthouse. There was loads of other labels. You know, with the likes of Luciano and Sizzler and Capleton, Everton, Blender, great singers in their own right, new singers, and still some of the old time guys, Michael Rose and maybe the Mighty Diamond, Sugar Minor. But musically, the sound of it was really, you know, it took a good interest in me, and I wanted to try and build tunes like that. And them type of tunes, they're not made to just be instrumentals, they're made to have singers on them. So that was, for me, you know, I had a little period right centre of the 90s. I was experimenting with anything, you know. I mean, did some ambient music, did some other things and what have you, just because I was bored of doing the steps thing. But, you know, started to make some tunes that were more like yard style, and it sort of started to come together for me, you know, and then start linking with a few singers that suit that style of rhythm. So then, you know, I started up a second label, which was my Backyard Movements label, and that was designed, you know, I mean, the backyard thing is partly comes from my studio because it's in the backyard, but also, you know, they call Jamaica Back-a-Yard. So it was like this little interconnection with it being, you know, sort of more in a form like Jamaican music and stuff. That was a good thing for a number of years, making music and trying to keep within that vibe. But, you know, over the last sort of 10 years, Jamaican music has sort of slowly been going down and down and down. Its evolvement has been slightly different. It's been very influenced from America, from R&B and hip-hop and stuff. You know, and some of the influence of that was kind of okay, but some of it was just like it was moving maybe too far away. And I think now, you know, there's very little to be influenced from. So you're kind of looking at the things that you was vibes from before. So, you know, I listened to still back to, you know, the 90s Exterminators and things. And I listened back to the 70s and maybe the 80s style of tunes for some influence from them, you know, maybe some direction. And then just seeing what works for me rather than following any kind of specific route, because I don't think there is a route to follow anymore. The last sort of number of years, a lot of my work has been for other labels, you know, sort of, it flowed that way and it's just evolved. So I do a lot of production work for various labels, you know, around the world, you know, whether they're in America or Europe or here. And that's kept me quite busy. It's sort of held me back a little bit from maybe concentrating fully on my own thing. Every now and again, it's like I'll make a little focus and release a couple of tune here and a couple of tune there and try to do something. But, you know, this period now, because I want to stop DJing, I want to concentrate more on the studio work. I'm hoping to release more tunes. And I've got tunes there with Christine Miller, I've got tunes with Vivian Jones, which will be a next release on my label. There's tunes with Dixie Peach. There's various tunes, you know what I mean? You've only got so much money to release stuff, you know, we're not wealthy people, you know, so, and it's a difficult business for releasing records, so you have to kind of pick and choose a little bit. I'm kind of determined just to try and keep the vinyl product going. That's always what reggae music has been about. When I first started, it was kind of, you know, we had a drum machine, but the rest of it was all live played live bass. My brother played rhythm guitar. We maybe share some keyboards and hit and bang a few bits of percussion and blow a melodica. Then it kind of evolved more into, you know, this working with sound modules and MIDI, you know, like digital equipment and stuff. I was very kind of strict with that for a long while. Very little live instrument. It was all computerized and stuff. And then, you know, as the systems in the studio changed, it was like there was more of a capability of mixing the two elements. You know, my studio's small, so I'm never going to be able to do like full live instrument stuff. You know, I can't get a drum kit in here. I can't play drums. You know, I can program a drum. I can't play the thing. So, you know, you have to kind of work within your limits and stuff. So yeah, you know, still quite a bit of programming going on. Sometimes I might play a keyboard bass. Sometimes I pick out the live bass and play that. Put rhythm guitar on it. Still, percussion might be some live percussion, or it might be some digital percussion. Whatever kind of sound suits and fits in the music. Horns, I'm very, very tired of keyboard horns, so I like to get live horns because I think they make a big difference. There's just something about live horns that just lift up a tune, so I kind of like to maintain live horns in my tunes where possible. But that's the main thing, is sort of bringing in or mixing them elements. I did have thoughts of maybe going a bit more live instrument and stuff, but I think in this time it's not really overly appealing to the few record buyers that are out there. I know people that do the live instrument stuff, and it's not really selling any more than anybody that's doing computerized stuff. You might get a little bit of kudos from it, from a section of people, but in the end you've got to try and sell records. There's lots of skills that you learn in a studio as well, all the technical side of stuff. That was always interesting. I've always kind of liked that side of it. You work your way up through all that, whether it's software based or whether it's analog based. I like analog gear, so I've got various good bits of gear that I've managed to be able to afford to buy over the years, and they all get used in the production to try and make it as professional as I can get it from my little studio. Because I think that's a thing that you've got right now, is there's a lot of people that are making music at home. They get their cracked version of Cubase, use its cheap inbuilt sound module, Hallion, and just make all their tunes with that. And you listen to it and it just all sounds a bit kind of cheap and cheesy. Music's an art form, so you have to make effort into that art form. If you was an artist and you did a painting, your painting wouldn't get in a Tate gallery if it wasn't painted by numbers, would it? Making music, you have to learn it as an art. You have to learn the details of production, and that can take time. But it's what else do you do in making music? I've never been to no college for this stuff. You can read some articles in a magazine. Usually it doesn't really correspond with what we do in reggae. They're not making articles on reggae producers so much. If they do, I've seen the occasional thing with Man Prof, but you don't really see any kind of giveaway secrets on what he's done. It's just, I've done this and I've done that, and blah, blah, blah. You can only learn so much by looking on the internet and stuff, and that nowadays. You need to get your hands on. It can take time, you know what I mean? But I kind of figure it's like, well, you've got a lifetime. Why do you need to rush? That's the thing that I try and tell a lot of people. I get asked a lot of questions, through emails and stuff like that. It's like, I'm just starting up, and I want to do this and I want to do that. It's just like, well, good that you're starting up, you know what I mean? It's like we all start somewhere, but give yourself some time. Don't expect your first production to come out on the street or to be played by a sound system, because maybe it's just rubbish, and a lot of it is, but you've got to understand it's just where you're starting. So you do that, you play it to someone, get an opinion. It's like, think about it. It's like, okay, I need to try harder now. Do the next one, do the next one, do the next one. And if it takes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, that's how long it takes. I started when I was 25. I didn't start when I was in my teens, and I'm 52 this year. I'm still learning. I still will continue to learn. What else is there to do? I've got no other skills. So, it's the time that I retire, and I just sit back and listen to music. Yeah, well, people can always check me on Facebook. I'm always on there. I try and reply to people all the time, and keep people posted of what any works that we're doing and stuff. Whether it's things that are my own releases or for other people. We try and keep that pushed. Also, all my released music previously is now on iTunes, so you can go and buy it there. You can't get the records; they no longer exist. Or you've got to pay some money on eBay. You can go buy the tuners on iTunes now. So go support that, because we need it, Do support the product. We make records these days. We make vinyl records. And, it needs supporting. It's the real artifact, As much as I might want people to buy an iTunes download, I'd still rather them buy the record. A download is zeros and ones. It ain't real. Vinyl is real. Go support it.